Hey everyone, and welcome to another Chairman of the Board ranking video. This is where I take a look at the last 5 new to me board games that I've played, and I rank and review them in order of preference. And I have a pretty strong lineup today, but before I get into the 5 games, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor keyender.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 5, I have Biss 20. Now, this is a pretty silly party game with a heavy degree of memory, which I understand is a big turn-off for a lot of players. And admittedly, I was a little bit apprehensive going into it because I thought, memory isn't really my jam. But this was surprisingly good fun. So it's pretty wacky, as you are basically counting from 1 to 20, but as you go through each number, there is basically new rules introduced which will substitute those numbers. So for example, instead of saying number 2, you might have to stand up, or instead of saying 3, you might have to moo like a cow. But these rules are drip fed round after round. So all you're doing is that you are saying a number in turn order. So you go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then maybe the 5 is replaced with a moo, so it'd be like 4, moo, 6, 7, stand up, and so on. But again, as you are completing these rounds by going from 1 to 20, then new rules are constantly added, which just make the game crazier and crazier. Numbers are swapped with each other. You are introduced farmyard animals. Maybe you are scratching your head or doing different things like that. And I normally find memory games a bit more off-putting if there's a big dump of information you have to try and manage thrown at you at once. But again, I love the way this one is very lightly scattered, and if someone does make a mistake, they simply lose one of their lives and you start again from that round. So it's not like it gets progressively more difficult regardless of how well the players are doing. So you kind of find your level or your group's level to in relation to how much memory you're expected to master. So this was actually, again, surprisingly good fun, and despite being at number 5, this one might hit the table more than all the others combined. So I can really see this one being a nice filler game. It only takes 10 minutes or so. And even if you are rubbish at it, it kind of enhances the game and makes it even more fun. And it's one of those games where you don't fight until all the players are eliminated. It's simply a single elimination, and there's one loser and everybody else wins. Or I suppose you could say the player who's lost the fewest lives would win. So it's not like it outstays its welcome or it takes too long, or after the novelty is worn off, it's not like it keeps on forcing you to play. Lots of cards as well to play with, so you're not seeing the same things each game. So tons of variety. And yeah, if you want a completely silly party game, a good icebreaker, and it almost feels like a drinking game, so you could take this one to a pub or something and have good fun with it. So that is Biss 20 at number 5. At number 4, I have Florenza, the dice game. So this is actually the 3rd iteration of the Florenza series. The first one being the board game, then there was a card game, and now the dice game. And this game is even a few years old. And admittedly, I've not played the other 2 versions, so this is the only one that I've played, so I cannot compare it to the board or card game. But this is a pretty straightforward, at least in the mechanical sense, roll and write game. But there is a stronger emphasis on resource management. So essentially what you're doing is that you are drafting dice, you're using those dice as certain resources, you try and complete artworks, buildings, climb tracks, and so on. But there are quite a few nifty little twists on this game that did intrigue me. So first off, again, mechanically, very easy. You're just rolling, I think it's 5 dice. Each one corresponds to a different resource. The higher the pip values on those dice normally means you'll get more resources to fill in your sheet with. But the lower valued of those pips are helpful because they let you climb the tracks faster, and they'll also let you buy these artists, which are used as your kind of rubber stamp to finish your different pieces of artwork. Now, the track climbing is fairly interesting because you do get combos as you go along, helping you tick off other things or getting resources and so on. But it also might give you an ongoing boon as long as you are in the lead on those tracks. So for example, there's this leader track where if you are the leader at a certain point in the game, then you'll get a free resource. Or I think it's the church track or the Pope track, which means that if you are in the lead, then you can actually choose dice that other players have already drafted, so you get lots more flexibility. And I do like the way this game actually does introduce some good player engagement, because when it's the active player's turn, they choose 3 dice from the pool, and the other players will get to choose the remaining ones. So again, you're always interested in what the other players are doing. Now, most of it is pretty straightforward. You are just again ticking off the resources that you've drafted and getting points accordingly. But there's one little twist that I thought was really interesting that I'd love to see more of, and that is this idea that you can only build buildings from left to right. You can choose what those buildings are, but you cannot start or complete the next one until you've already finished the ones earlier in your little player sheet. So you actually have full freedom of what you want to build. So you can start off really heavy buildings if you want to, which might give you a lot of points, or you might want to start with some of those more affordable buildings that will give you ongoing benefits, such as having the ability to use any pip value when you choose a certain dice, or getting more resources and so on. So lots of cool things you can do with the buildings there. But as I said, if you want to commit to something, you might have some overspill of resources, and you might start allocating those resources to your next planned building. So I love the way that you're forced to think ahead here, and if you do very carefully and meticulously plan which resources you need, not only for your current building but the future ones, then you can actually play this game super efficiently if you are careful. So I love the way this game forces you to think that way. The rest of it, again, is pretty standard stuff. Again, just constantly getting benefits, trying to score as many points as you can, getting the right resources, and making the most of the powers that you've collected for the buildings that you've already built. So again, simple stuff, but I do like that, again, those small little tweaks to make it more interesting. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not sure this game does enough to differentiate itself from so many other roll and write games. I've already said on this channel many times that I tend to enjoy roll and write games when they are a bit more pick up and play, 10 to 20 minutes. This one you're looking at around 30 to 40 minutes, so it's again almost double what I'd normally use a roll and write game for. But I don't think it outstays its welcome, but I think if I'm going to play a 45-minute roll and write resource management game, I might lean towards, say, a 70 or 60 to 90-minute proper Euro instead, and get that full experience. So it kind of walks a weird line of what I want in my collection, and I kind of struggle to see who this audience or who this game's audience is. But that's no discredit to the game at all. The game is good fun. Again, there's some clever tweaks, some good resource management, and the dice drafting is actually pretty tense. So that is Florenza, the dice game, at number 4. At number 3, I have The Lands of Galzyr. So this is a game that, to be honest, I was going into it thinking that I would not like it, because I'm much more of a mechanically driven gamer. I like Euros. I don't care how dry a game is. I'm not really interested in storytelling when it comes to board games, because if I want a good story, I'll just read a book. But this one did very pleasantly surprise me, because it didn't try to be anything that it wasn't. It didn't kind of half-assedly try and add in unnecessary mechanisms. It really did focus on that storytelling, and I think it did it in a very charming way. A big part of that is the theme and setting, because these are very cute little critters that you're running around this kind of fantasy world, talking to other little critters, and doing rather funny things. So it didn't take itself too seriously, but at the same time it wasn't too wacky either. So again, mechanically this game has almost nothing going for it. You are just visiting different locations and rolling dice to resolve these different events. Now you do have a little bit of say over how your character, or how their strengths are divided out. So you have like all the different classical fantasy traits, your fighting ability, your charisma, your survival skills, and so on. And you have these different markers on your little player board to see how good or how efficient you are in those different fields of expertise, which will drastically affect your ability to roll well in those different fields. So again, you are just going around trying to complete missions, picking up new ones off billboards. And the way that you actually resolve these different events is used through this app system, which is really good. It's very well polished, easy to navigate, nice and easy to read. And yeah, you are doing, again, pretty silly things. Now, we had a really good time with this one because, again, we didn't take it too seriously. We just went with the flow and just enjoyed the chilled out nature of it. Now, just as a just an example scenario that we ran into, so one of us actually went to this theatre location to discover that the main actor had an injury, and then the production manager wanted us to sort it out for him. And we had the option to either try and use our survival skills to heal up the main actor, or we could use our, say, charisma skills to try and take the actor's role for ourselves and do that performance. And of course, you're again rolling dice and hoping to get certain symbols. Again, depending on the category, you'll have a much higher probability of rolling the faces that you need if you are, again, efficient in that particular skill. And then, again, if you roll well, you'll get a much better outcome, and you will then get more of these kind of legend points where you're trying to increase the aura or the legend or mythos of your particular character, which is the idea of this game. So it's not like there's a particular objective to this. You're not trying to defeat the big boss or anything like that. You're just meandering around trying to build up your reputation. Now, each character does have their own special abilities, and they also have their own starting story just to get you moving on the board. And yeah, it's quite nice how you can just go along this at your own pace. You can play it for as long or as short as you want. And one of the biggest things that impressed me about this game is how easy it is to pack away and just set up and play again and pick up from where you left off. So, you can have all your old equipment that you picked up that will make you better at different things, disguises and things like that. And you just have everything ready for you, ready to start again. And the next time you'll already have your mission cards in your little player pack. And again, there's no fiddliness. There's no different kind of components here and there and everywhere to try and track how well you are. It's all just boiled down onto that little player board with a few cards. So again, this is a very difficult game for me to review, but I had to do it on an enjoyment factor alone. And mechanically, this game is as weak as it gets, just rolling dice to see the outcome. But it oozes charm, and it's the kind of game where, this particularly works for me, if I've had a really tough or exhausting day at work, then this is a nice one just to sit down with your friends and just enjoy the process with, rather than racking your brain over playing some Euro efficiency puzzle. So it's a good game to have in your back pocket for those occasions, and I think it works for our game group really well. Now, I've had quite a mixed history of playing like RPGs and things like that. I tend to think that they always strike that balance wrong. They're either too combat driven or not mechanically driven enough. This one, I think it hits that sweet spot for me, and it didn't try to be anything that it wasn't, and that's what I really liked about the Lands of Galzyr. So that is the Lands of Galzyr at number 3. At number 2, I have Rival Cities. So this is the newest design by Andreas Sedding, who is most known for Hansa Teutonica and Florenza, so made some really good games. Now, this is a bit different to his normal fare, because this is a 2-player only kind of sudden death style game. So there are actually 5 different fronts that you and your opponent are fighting on. Now, 4 of them are sudden death conditions, and one of them is simply victory points if none of those sudden death conditions are met, basically. So the game is a kind of a rondel style game, as you have the board with a bunch of cards spread around. You can do it randomly if you like, or there is suggested setups, as well as some special cards mixed in there as well. And you can simply move your player piece 1 or 2 spaces around the rondel for free, or if you want to go more than that, then you are going to have to start paying resources. Now, the different fronts you're fighting on are kind of several tug-of-war tracks, as well as some set collection, and there is a kind of a strong thread of resource management going on behind the scenes to get those cards that you need. So I suppose we'll start with the different ways to win. So first of which, there's this big tug-of-war track, like this prestige track on the main board, where if you collect these hearts, you could pull the little marker in your direction, and if you pull it far enough, you'll instantly win. But if it's on your side of the table, then you will get some passive income at the end of the round, which can be really helpful and help you with the different fronts you're fighting on. You can collect these ships that will give you instant or ongoing benefits, and if you ever have 3 more ships, or maybe more than 3 ships, I can't remember, than your opponent, then you'll instantly win. The ships, of course, cost resources. You've got these kind of affiliation cards that there's 4 of them available at any game or any time. And as long as you are in control of these cards, you'll get quite a powerful benefit. But every time you go around the rondel, you do need to pay resources to keep hold of them. And you can even snatch them off your opponent. And these will do things such as increasing your yield of resources or giving you discounts on other parts of the game. And you also have these lawsuits, which are kind of multiple little tug-of-war games, where when you go to the lawsuit places, you will pay resources to move your little marker in your direction and try and again beat your opponent. But unlike the main tug-of-war board, these ones are resolved at the end of every round. So even if you are slightly ahead of your opponent, you will win that lawsuit and get the benefit from it. And if you ever collect, I think it's 3 lawsuits, you'll instantly win the game. But there are lots of ways to manipulate the state of play by shifting those lawsuits around so that maybe the ones you're struggling on will be pushed back into a couple of rounds' time, and you can focus on the other ones and use that time to catch back up. Now, despite having so many moving parts, the game is pretty easy to digest, and there is some good synergies between those different facets of the game. So, for example, you might buy this ship, which will be one of the ones that you need, and that ship might let you move down the tug-of-war track. So you're constantly looking over your shoulder here because there are so many things you need to manage and you're spinning so many plates. The game just forces you to feel paranoid, and which I think is what the game is trying to do and the feeling the game is trying to get across. So if you want a game that as soon as you set it up, you need to be looking over your shoulder and being aware of all the options that not only you can take, but try and block your opponent from taking actions that they want to. The game system itself is pretty simple. Again, just move around the rondel, use one of the basic abilities if you want to. You can use these more powerful abilities, but they will take you an extra turn because you spend a turn picking them up and then a future turn playing them. And those are normally really, really good and much more powerful than the basic abilities. But you even do have this additional option to spend these envelopes that you can collect to do both of those actions, which can be a good got your moment for your opponent. So this one, again, on paper, it's everything I like. It's very mechanically sound, kind of runs like a well-oiled machine, very well put together and realised. Production on the whole is pretty decent. I mean, it looks relatively, like a traditional Euro, maybe pretty boring looking to some players. I personally like the way it looks. There are some major minor issues, I'd say, with some of the components, especially when it comes to these lore tracks, where you have these little kind of cardboard pieces where you're moving the little marker up and down. They kind of slide around easily on the board, and they're they're a little bit too fiddly and chintzy. I think they could have been a bit more robust because you can quite easily lose your place on those lore tracks. So I do like most things about this game. In fact, I kind of feel like I'm nitpicking on it because I can't actually put my thumb on why exactly the game, or why I didn't love the game. So I did like it a lot, and I think it's going to be very popular and highly well reviewed. But the game did feel a little bit soulless to me, and I didn't really connect with it, if that makes sense. I kind of felt like I was looking at the game from a bird's eye view, and I could appreciate it, but I didn't really feel like I was not enjoying it, but I didn't really feel like this is a game that I want to keep coming back to. It kind of felt like, yeah, I played it, I enjoyed how all the different parts mesh with each other, but I wasn't really invested in keep on coming back and seeing what other things the game had to offer. I think maybe a big part of that was because I have games like Seven Wonders Duel in my collection. I think Seven Wonders Duel has a slightly elevated fun factor as compared to Rival Cities, but I do think if you like one, you like the other, and if there's room in your collection for 2 games that are, I'm not going to say they're similar, but they do have some crossover, then you will probably have space in your collection for both of them, and you won't regret having both of them in your collection. Now, I'm kind of at a place now where I want a game in my collection, or a single game in my collection for each occasion. And I think for my tense 2-player tug of war style game, I'm probably always going to choose Seven Wonders Duel over this one. Hence why I probably won't be keeping hold of it. But if you do very regularly play all your games and you regularly hit the game table with 2 players only, then this is a very credible choice for your collection, and I think you're going to have a good time with it, as well as making good decisions, because there is a good degree of resource management. Knowing what to do at any time is highly important, because again, you are always looking over your shoulder about what your opponent could do, and you don't want to be caught off guard and lose when you least expect it. So again, nice game. I think maybe it's not going to be to everyone's taste when it comes to the visual appeal. I think just because it's not like, you know, we're in this age now where everything's animal themed or nature themed, and it has that cutesy feel. This one has again a more traditional early 2000s look to it, which doesn't seem to be the thing in trend at the moment. So that might work against it. But gameplay, it is rock solid. That is Rival Cities at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Come Sail Away. So this is by Sashi and Daryl Chow, 2 designers that I tend to really respect and enjoy their designs. And this is a game that I've been after for a couple of years now, and it's only just become available here in the UK. Now, a big part of why I was so interested in this game is because it truly focuses on the Mancala mechanism, which is a mechanism I tend to really enjoy. They're one of my favourite games of all time. Trajan uses that mechanism, and I've always loved it and been interested with how to very carefully and meticulously place your tokens down on different locations. Now, if you're not familiar with what the Mancala system is, it's basically you are picking up a bunch of tokens. In this case, it's going to be these coloured meeples, and then dropping them off in a fixed order, kind of chaining out on different tiles. Now this one, those tiles are different rooms in a cruise ship. So you've got your staircase and your different lobbies and things and cabins, and you're trying to get the correct coloured meeple in the correct place. And you're going to get points once you've completed the criteria of these rooms. So for example, the cabins, say the blue cabin wants a blue meeple sat on it, and once all 3 of those cabins are complete, you'll flip that tile over, get victory points at the end of the game, but you will also then restrict yourself going forward, because that's a new space that you cannot place a meeple on during that Mancala dropping system. And if you ever have a meeple that you cannot deposit in a location because you can't physically do so, or you might even choose to opt to do so, then you'll put those surplus meeples in a negative scoring pile. So this is a true example of an efficiency puzzle where you're very carefully mapping out where all your meeples go, keeping your options open, but there's also this thread of racing, because if you get certain rooms completed before your opponents, you will get some additional bonus points. So there's a good little push and pull there that runs through the entire game. There's a good degree of kind of replayability added in as well, because each game, not only do you play with, I think it's the 5 basic cabin rooms, there are 5 special rooms that you can choose to mix and match as the game goes on. So they're all pretty similar, but they do work in different ways. So for example, some of them might say you want 2 pairs of meeples of different colours, or one room might want 1 meeple of each different colour, or only meeples with these little cabins, little luggage symbols on, and if you ever get a meeple with a luggage symbol in a luggage room, then you go along this luggage track, which will unlock additional rooms and give you more kind of freedom mitigation tools to move people around, maybe pick them up from the supply or take them back from your negative pile and put them on the board. So there's lots going on, but it's all boiled down to this very simple mechanism, and I tend to like games that focus on one mechanism and try to utilize that to the best of its ability. Now, I must say the game, mechanically is pretty repetitive. I'm literally repeating every single turn, but one of the strongest kind of attributes this game has is how quick it is. It only takes around 25 minutes to play, but it does deliver this real satisfying feeling, and it does actually feel like you're playing a grander and bigger game. At least by the time you finish, you kind of feel quite proud of what you've done, and it's quite satisfying kind of putting everything in the right room. And there's good decisions to be made on how many meeples you're putting down, because you are restricted to these cards that you have, which will show the colours you're depositing and the order in which you can do it. And are you going to go for a card that has 4 meeples on it, which means you're going to fill up your rooms much faster and hopefully get those endgame points by completing those rooms? Or are you going to maybe place meeples down that only have 2 on it each time, where you can place anywhere on the board, but of course you're only putting 2 meeples on the map then, which means you're working at a way slower pace than your opponents might be doing. So again, there's not really much more to say. It's a pretty bare bones game, all built around that one mechanism, but I love the escalation as you're climbing up those tracks, putting more buildings or more rooms into your cruise ship. How the game chokes you as the game goes on, as fewer and fewer spaces are available for your meeples. It kind of feels so nice when you've got like four rooms that only need 1, or 4 tiles that only have 1 room left, and you get the perfect array of meeples, and you deposit them all and finish 4 rooms at once. But at the same time, you could end up creating little isolated spots on your cruise ship, meaning that you can't really get meeples into that room without taking negative points. So yeah, this one really works for me. I'm not going to say it's an amazing game, but it's a really nice and rich kind of 30-minute game experience that has its own niche. So I said earlier that I really like the Mancala system, but those Mancala games are normally involved in more heavy Euro games that are going to take an hour and a half to 2 hours. Or are they going to be more abstract of nature? You think of those traditional African Mancala style games. This one has much more of a modern feel, and it just feels more bright, vibrant, and more fun. But again, I love how simple the game is, blended with how restrictive the game is in those later turns. So yeah, 2 thumbs up from me. Thoroughly enjoyed, and I think this one's going to stick around for quite some time in my collection. So that is Come Sail Away at number 1. So there we have it. That concludes the video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other content too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.